heard of you when you keynoted the AI on the lot session just a year ago. For some reason, we hadn't, connected through both of our years and years in tech. I see, I know, because I know when I said say general magic, still only a few people look up and right. And of course, being in LA, I grew up in LA, but anyway, thanks for being here and excited to hear what your perspective is, right, of just where we are now in
Yeah.
history and everything else happening.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is such an amazing, sort of organization that you all have pulled together, and it's wonderful to be able to, share this information with people who generally would have to sort of find other ways to get to it and try and collect all of the different parts and pieces around. You all have packaged it very nicely, so thank you for having me.
Thanks, Renard. Um, so what have you seen? I mean, I know, your background goes through
Mhm.
to PBS and
Yeah.
that, what's going on with PBS. That could be a different conversation for other things now, right? But
Yeah.
Warner Bros. And it Discover, I won't go there. Discover other things in just content and tech and
Mhm.
distribution. Had a lot of those
Yeah.
conversations leading up to it. Um, I would say, like, just what excites you about where we are now and moving forward?
Yeah, I think what excites me most about the fact that we have, we've gotten into the space where we really do have artificial intelligence. For years in the media space and in the marketing space, the terms AI were being used over and over again. And I was one of those individuals who was telling everybody to stop doing that because we were not actually using artificial intelligence. We were doing a lot of machine learning and a lot of automation, and we've been doing that, to be honest, since the '60s. So putting that into the media supply chain, putting that into the production pipelines and sort of, making things a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, a lot of that was actually happening. And I think it was Resha who said 1992, and that's really interesting time frame because that was also the time when you really started to hear about the shift from analog to digital within television. So you also had the same shift with computers becoming more of a home tool. They had gotten their real start like back in the '80s, and people were starting to get them and starting to use them, but they weren't really sort of a thing in everyone's home and in everyone's workplace and being mobile and all of those things until around the early '90s. Once that started, that opened the door for people to look at their jobs differently. It didn't matter what job you were doing. All of a sudden, there was a computer involved. For me, I was in the business of production and film production and television production and commercials and things of that nature. And all of a sudden, nonlinear editing came along. So instead of us actually, sitting down and rolling back and forth and putting things together piece by piece, we had the option to say, look at a bin with all of our footage in it and then be able to pull that into a timeline and start to lay it out. And so we started to be able to automate some of those processes and it started to speed things up. Well, when we get to what we're doing right now, we have that ability again to speed up our processes and to enhance our human experience to the point where we can actually get more work done through the use of these tools. And in some cases, on the creative side, you can use them to help you sort of prompt different things and different ways of looking at your original ideas. So I'm excited about pretty much every aspect of the media business and what we are able to do. But I am concerned about the use of these tools in place of human beings. I'm also concerned about how some of the larger language models have been trained and the fact that there is no transparency in what was used. That, for me, being a person who actually creates some of these tools, makes me wonder, how do I keep the people that are responsible for the work that I'm doing and for the work that I hope to be able to do in the future? How do I keep them safe? How do we lean in on the idea of building clean models and making that a thing? And not being so worried about, oh, if it's a clean model, we're not going to have enough data. That's not necessarily true. There are hundreds of thousands of artists in the world who, if they were to be compensated, would be very happy to share their work or a portion of their work. You know, doing it in the right way is one of those things that's really important to me. But yeah, I'm excited about this. It really does, especially from a filmmaker standpoint. It makes, sort of the ability to get your ideas out of your head and then have them in a visual representation a little bit easier. And especially for individuals who don't necessarily have the gift of illustration, or someone who is uncomfortable, in behind a camera and trying to direct what happens. They're more comfortable with an image that they can manipulate, or an image in which they can actually now start to add motion to, even if it's simplistic motion, and some of them come out very, very weird. But you have the ability to start to try and ideate your ideas. And I personally believe that that's going to get us to a point where we have more interesting stories being developed, a more variety. We're going to see stories coming from parts of our world that don't necessarily have a big machine behind them to share their stories. I think all of that is really exciting to me.
Right. And it's almost just, I think we've all probably experienced, we show somebody ChatGPT for the first time, or we show
Yeah.
them Gamma or some of these other tools. I am so excited about just really every vertical, but I think
Mhm.
Hollywood specifically, because so many amazing storytellers and just things that can be amplified throughout the world. So speaking of storytellers, Simone, welcome. Meet Renard, who I was going to connect you with too. Go for it.
Yes. Hi, Renard. I'm also from the television development world. And my question for you, you also have like one foot in entertainment and one foot in tech. I mean, AI is like still a bad word in entertainment.
Mhm.
Like, people are they're not quick to acknowledge that they're using it at all. They're
Mhm.
very scared of like just this, there seems to be this moral panic. And I'm wondering if you, from past experiences of like new technology, if you see the entertainment world being a couple steps behind in adaptation, or if you think like if it'll take longer for us to get there, or if you think AI, we might be able to win Hollywood over a little bit quicker.
Well, Simone, first, it's great to meet you. Always good to meet someone else who's in this crazy business. I will simply say that yes, there is a lot of fear around AI, and when you look at it from a business standpoint, if you're using a large language model and you don't actually know what was in the model, you run the risk that if there is a lawsuit, if there is some sort of action taken against that company, and they are forced to have to either be transparent about what they did and compensate whoever they scraped and all those types of things, that may take them and put them out of business, which then puts whatever you have built on that particular model out of business as well. So from a business standpoint, you have that going on. And so, yes, the five families are very concerned about how AI is used within the studios and so forth and so on. I get that. From the artist side, especially from the writers and from those who are creating imagery in the animation space and things of that nature, who have their work out in the world already, there is a good amount of fear and concern, and with good reason, because if you are taking their content and not using and not compensating them and not acknowledging them, you are depreciating their intellectual property. And doesn't matter what the laws are about that. What matters is the fact that someone has been done wrong. And so that's the part where people are really fearful about AI. It has less to do with the technology, and it has more to do with who's controlling and using the technology. The best quote that I heard, and I wish I could remember who said it to me, but they said, if the tool is being used by a tool, then we're all in trouble. And I use that and I want to get that out in the world because that's the real concern. You know, tech has changed. Tech continues to change. It always does. You know, there was a, when Photoshop came out, everyone was crying that, this is going to be the end of photography. And, you can't believe anything that you see and all of these things. And, you can do all this stuff. And while, yes, you can change and manipulate photography, you can do all these wonderful things with it. However, photographers have still made a living because the one thing that you can't replicate is a live event. No one is going to be able to replicate something that is happening live in this world today and say, I'm going to do that. Now, they can copy it after it's done, but they can't create that. So I do think that right now, especially where I am seated, that we're doing a lot in Hollywood to move things forward and get people comfortable with the use of AI, but properly doing it where the human interaction with the tools is at the forefront of what's actually being done. Because these tools can generate, but only humans can create.
I like that. Thank you, Simone. Okay.
That was great.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to add Raymond. Simone, I'll put you back and raise your hand again if you want to come up. Hey, Raymond.
I don't want to hog every conversation. Great presentation, Renard. There was just one thing that you were talking about, that there's much more available from all of the creators out there if they can be rewarded for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that just kind of slipped away under the radar there.
Yeah.
That the whole impetus of technology evolution and these technology giant companies is to give away things for free. And it's always to give away other people's things for free. I've said this on other WITI calls as well. And they mainly do that through undermining IP protections for the creators. And if the IP protections, like a creator will create for a number of reasons. One is that they will do it from the sheer joy of creation. And that's wonderful. They do it from altruism, that they want to give a gift to the world. But some of them, this is their job. And they'll spend 10 years or 20 years developing a craft. And if there isn't an incentive for them to put in the hard work of developing that craft, you're going to get fewer and fewer people who are going to do this as a job. That's one thing. You see somebody like Eric Schmidt gave a speech and they had to take it down again afterwards. But he was talking about any of the new startups, just come along and just infringe everything. Now, he didn't quite say it that way, but what he says, infringe that way. And then afterwards, when people come to sue you, by that stage, you're going to be very successful and you can afford to pay the lawyers to be able to fight all of those things.
Yeah, I remember that.
So there's a massive incentive to take the intellectual property that's created by the creators. And there isn't an impetus going towards paying them more. And that's the reason why the creators were going on strike in Hollywood, because they could see that AI was going to be used to take away their creativity and they weren't going to get fairly rewarded for it. So I'm very worried about the idea that, oh yeah, we'll just pay the creators and then we'll have infinite source of creativity. The world also is not valuing that creativity. They're valuing the output, and you can get the output a lot cheaper now using the tools. So in the rush to get things cheaper, like you talk about that people still need photographers. There are much fewer people making money as wedding photographers now than there were 20 years ago. There's much fewer people who are making money as gigging musicians than were 20 years ago. Because the technology has made it possible to have a more mediocre but still acceptable result. So some people are not prepared to pay the premium for creativity. Some people don't see the cost to civilization of taking away that premium. So that's my kind of rant on this. And I hope I'm not being too unkind on that, but that's my strong feeling on it.
No, I don't think you're being unkind at all. I think you're being a realist. And, what you have to say is very important. Now, I will say this. If you are listening to some of the music that's being generated by AI, it all sounds the same. Okay, no matter which genre you go through, and you can say, okay, I want to create a jazz tune. Over time, they all really start to sound really generic. Okay, if individuals are willing to accept that as good, that's not much that we can do. because that's the audience that has accepted that. However, it's like, when you give someone sugar-free ice cream and then you give them ice cream with sugar for the first time. All right. When you give them real jazz, their eyes are going to open up. They're going to want to seek more. Okay. That's a much harder issue to deal with. But what you're talking about when you talk about individuals not being incentivized to do this work because they feel like either they're going to be ripped off or they're not going to be compensated properly, all of those types of things. I think my personal feeling about that is when we start to force companies to actually be upfront and be honest about the way that they're operating. And that's where you can really do that. People can change the way that these companies operate. And I will simply tell you, look at Target as an example. Target made a decision at the beginning of this year. Target is now scrambling to get their customers back because of that decision. If we, as human beings, say, you know what, I'm not going to settle for mediocrity. I want good quality content, which is why we go to the movies. Instead of just saying, okay, with this huge, big, wonderful, 70 millimeter shot movie, I'm going to just watch it on my phone. No, you want that experience of being immersed in this space. You want that experience of suspending your disbelief for a moment. That's
Yeah,
the good part
I
about it.
really have to fight with you on this, Renard.
And I appreciate you fighting with me, and we can go toe to
And my reason for
toe.
fighting for you is that, educated, sophisticated people will want to have that higher level.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who find the mediocre is quite acceptable, especially when they can get it for free.
Free is always hard to beat, Raymond. You and I both
Yeah,
know that.
and there's a
Free, yeah,
cost of free. Somebody's paying for the free.
free is always hard to beat.
Yes.
But even with free, and look, I am a person who, really I don't fit the demographics of the folks that are sort of YouTube first, and coming from the broadcast world, for me to say that is a big deal. But I am YouTube first most of the time, or I'm streaming first, you know, and that's a guy who's done 20 some years in broadcast, but that's where things are right now. However, I am selective about it. And you're right. There's an audience that will accept anything, but there's also an audience that will demand quality. And I think over time, as we continue to sort of see and YouTube is a great example, because if you remember at the beginning of YouTube, before AI and all this other stuff, there was some good stuff on there. Like if you wanted to learn how to, fix your faucet or something like that, and those types of things, and there's good stuff, but it was a lot of trash. There was a
Mm.
lot of just trash, and there was no one really monitoring it or really, but it was just trash, and people were like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Then
No,
they
the
began to
good stuff is
say,
bubbling up to the top.
exactly,
But what
then
I'd
they
also
began to
say,
put more there.
yes,
That's when they started to get to the point where people are saying, wow, this is a real business, this is a real thing.
but it's also, I should also say, it's not just about free, it's also about convenience. You talked
Yes,
about the beautiful cinematic experience. Like,
yes,
E.T. in the cinema with the surround sound is totally different from E.T. on your phone. But there's a lot of people who find it convenient that they can get ET on the phone and watch it on the train. And
yeah,
also, they can only go to ET when it's in the cinema for the 2 weeks that it's in the cinema.
hmm
They
yeah,
can get it on the phone whenever they want. Or if they want to watch it in the middle of the night, they can do it. They can watch it in the middle of the night and they can pause it and watch the rest tomorrow. You can't
hmm
do that in the cinema. So there's
right,
lots of
yeah.
convenient things where people will accept a lower level of fidelity, a lower level of artistic standard for the not just because it's cheap, but also because it's convenient.
Yeah, I think you got two things going here, because we can look at cable television. All right. When cable television came out, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so awesome," and whatever. I'm never gonna have to pay for this because I get it over the air. And then all of a sudden, cable had more and more and more and more and more, and then people were like, "Hey, I can't get that over the air, so I'm gonna pay for it." And then they fell into the trap of saying, "Oh wait, I'm still bound to the schedule." And so everybody started to say, well, you know what? I really would love to have a la carte in cable. I would really love to be able to choose what I want as a part of cable. And the cable provider said, oh, that's an interesting idea. However, we're not going to give that to you, but we'll give you this basic, and then we'll add a few things here and there. Okay, so you can choose a few things here, but you're still going to keep paying that premium amount for us. All right, so that's the business model and the capitalism that comes in. So you've got that sort of thing happening, and then the streamers come and they say, guess what? We're not bound by a schedule. We're going to give you the ability to choose whatever it is that you actually want to go with. And this is where all this wonderful stuff starts to happen, which is why streamers started to rise. Now, we all know that streaming, while it's starting to make a profit, it was not making a profit for a while because it had no real revenue model other than subscription. Subscription works, but then, like you were saying, Raymond, people are fickle. They want to move to something else. Guess what? Stop the subscription, go to something else. Now you got to try and catch somebody else. All right. How do they get them? Like you said, by giving it for free for 3 months or $2.99 for 3 months. They get you hooked, you get going, you forget about it. Your credit card's being charged for the next 2, 20, 30 years. All right. And you've got all these streamers happening. That's one problem. All right. The other side of this is looking at whether or not human beings will be satisfied for the long term with low quality content. And from my standpoint, the answer to that is no. Because you can have low quality content. Trust me, I can show you stuff I created when I was 8 years old that was fascinating to my mother, but not necessarily to the neighbor kids who I was trying to get to pay me 10 cents to watch what I was doing. We can do that same thing. As people get used to a platform, they start to want to see more and more and more. And that is the human part of us, is that we want to keep moving forward. We want to keep seeing things get better. And for whatever reason, we always want higher resolution and higher quality. You're not going to get all of that on your phone. You know, you kind of lose a little bit of the experience. And you make a great point. Yeah, convenience, hey, you can't beat that. But the experience is what really, that's what it's about. That's what storytellers, that's what we do. We make movies and we make television to give people an experience. You know, I love that part of my job. I love the fact that I can look back and say, wow, my team worked on that particular movie. And, you know, no one knows my name from a can of worms, but I'm sitting in the theater and I'm watching how people are interacting with it. That's just, you know, for me personally, I love that film. I can't beat that. But yeah, Raymond, get in touch with me. Let's have a virtual tea and just go toe to toe.
I'll connect you guys. Raymond's speaking tomorrow on a lot of the IP issues. I'll connect the two of you.
Awesome. Hey, I've been doing a lot of work on that side of the world too. Yeah, we've had some good luck recently with the removal of the 10-year moratorium. We were part of that group of people who had the opportunity to speak and say that that doesn't work for technology and it doesn't work for the rest of us. Okay.
Nice. Craig, go for it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Renard.
Hey.
Great stuff. So, man, you got me going. As an artist, I started with music. That's how I started my life, and that's been a significant part of my career early on. And as an artist, musician, I had two things that really drove me, performance and the creation of music and that. And I always wanted to have reach. I like that. So one thing the tech in general, but AI is definitely moving forward with this, is the accessibility and the ability to do more for less, and for people to receive it for more and for less, or more of it and for less. And so there's both sides of that, right? So one is that the world is more connected, and I can actually be global in an instant, and
Yeah.
that's a huge boon. At the same time, there's the issue of, that means also, how do I monetize it for myself so I can make a living doing it?
Mhm.
when it's just out there. Those are all big issues. But I think somebody was mentioning there's both sides, right? There's a
Yeah, yeah.
duality there. That's one thing I just wanted to say. But so it's interesting. You got me going on that one. But a couple of my questions were like, you mentioned modeling, and that really
Mhm.
was interesting to me because from your tech side, I'm curious. I I'm very passionate about trying to figure out how to provide people with a lower a bar of entrance to how they can train modeling, how they can do their
Mhm.
own AI modeling, if you will. And so, even on a personal level, do you see, or on a small firm level, media
Mhm.
wise, do you see that smaller media outlets would be open to that and would be supportive of that kind of reality, or are they always going to be trying to grab the low fruit of, Gen AI that's just grabbing from everything?
No, no, no. There are a lot of independent studios that are coming up right now, and this is a renaissance. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, the independent film industry just really blew up, and people were really interested in independent film and those voices that were coming from it. We're having independent studios because AI is making the technology a little bit more affordable for them to actually be able to do more with less. You are seeing a lot of these studios start to pop up, and some of them are being funded very well. Moon Valley just got something like $84 million, to kind of do something. And if you're making a big blockbuster film, that's nothing. But if you're, kind of taking the time to say, I'm going to do some independent things, that's a lot of money to play with.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they are coming along, and a lot of them are actually creating their own LoRas and their own small language model setups. They are focused in that space, and using a LoRa. Especially for musicians, I think it's really cool to be able to use a LoRa and to put your music into that LoRa and have it generate back out music that sounds like yours, and it's
You
only
saying the
yours.
Laura?
LoRa, it's LORA.
Okay.
Okay. And using that, that's a way for you to have this small little agent that's just trained on your stuff.
Mm.
It's really cool. So yeah, there are a lot of folks who are looking into that right now. There are a lot of people who are doing it. Moon Valley, Stereo Films, Dave Clark and his team, and oh my goodness, I forgot their name, and Dave is gonna kill me that I forgot the name of his studio. Um, but um, but that's another that if you haven't seen Dave Clark's work, look up his AI work. Paul Trillo is a great director. These are folks who are actually doing that kind of work that you're talking about, Craig. They're small studios with big reach.
Sounds like I need to get out in that area because it
Yeah,
sounds like
yeah.
good business. Right
Yeah,
on.
and there's also a huge community of composers and musicians who are looking at AI and who are trying to figure out where does it fit
Mhm.
and how to keep musicians safe as well while you're in the midst of doing all of it.
Yeah, blockchain, et cetera. There's a lot of
Yeah, 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 yeah. All kinds of cool stuff out there. But yeah, don't let the tech, get in front of the art.
right, exactly. Well, I want to
Yeah,
do both, so it's
yeah.
interesting. Yeah. I want to I'm sorry to hog, but I want to say one more thing that I just appreciated. I don't know if it's a
Mhm.
question per se, but when you were talking about the human in the loop, I think that's like moving in the future. I think there's two things. There's security and
Yeah.
protection, and then
Mhm.
there's the human. Like
Yes.
authenticity, I think is going to be a differentiator. The AI
Mhm.
tooling and the AI things that people do that include human and are authentic are always
Yes.
that's going to rise, and that's
Oh yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like that's the protection for all of us. Anyway,
100%. 100%. When you think about writers, if crafting a story is one thing and being able to follow a template is one thing. That's perfectly fine. But adding in the nuance that a writer has based off of their lived experience is something that, at least for right now, that's not something that can be generated.
right on. Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for your
Thanks,
talk.
Yeah.
Craig. Scott, welcome.
Oh, you're muted, Scott.
Yeah, oh yeah, I don't hear you. You're not muted on Zoom.
Oh, can't hear him.
No, we might have an issue. Scott, try one more time, okay? Okay, wait, you got to fix that, Scott. because we don't hear you. But Sarah, you asked your question while Scott is fixing his technical difficulties.
First of all, this is an interesting conversation for sure. And this is an issue that we always have through the beginning of time, I think. I'm old enough to remember the beginning of the internet, and really what took the internet to its height was what? What do you think in this case? What application, Richard, was the first to really bring it to the core? And
I don't
that,
think it was, yeah, I don't think it was an application. I
and
think
I'm
what,
telling you, it was porn. And one of the things that people were afraid of in porn, there would be no more real sex. And I can attest that there are babies out there. Okay. And so one of the things, but it seems like it satisfies a need. So I'm starting with that. And I'm also starting, look at us. I remember physically the last time I went to a WITI conference was in California, and we all had to go there. Think about, we have people from all over the world here, and we wouldn't have been able to have that without our technology. Now you're saying with the AI. So I think it basically is as a part. And now, as being a researcher at the university, we've done studies now and that part of AI really stops having our brain think.
oh
For
yeah,
instance, if you're just doing it, even in writing, right? That people basically giving them to use ChatGPT, which is wonderful, that now I get all my students, when they send me anything, I know that it's written coherently. I know that it's written with AI, but I'd rather have that than having some junk sent to me. So that's a point. So, and there's also my musician friends. Basically, some of them are aching because, you know, they love creating, and they say now any schmo can create some music, and that bothers me. But then I have other musicians that, what are they doing? We have Grammy Award winners at our university and other places where they're saying, you know what we do? We're working on a hit song and something's missing. So what they're doing is they're using that AI for that something, that last beat, or just to basically get me moving and get me innovative on it. So I think, and I have comedian writers, and I said to them, one is writing a book on how do you write jokes. Right? He used to be the head writer of The Daily Show. So one of the things is, I said, if I gave you $1 million, how would you train an AI to do a good joke? So they're getting better and better. And it really is that part. People are still urging, like you say, to go to the movies. People are still urging to go to restaurants, to meet, even these dating apps, right? Some of them are saying, let's actually meet real people rather than swiping left, swiping right. So it's the combination. We also go on a pendulum. Things swing back. But that human element, would you say, has to work with it. And let's face it, it's out there, and a lot of people are going to be unemployed. I don't care what you say, is that you have to, I think, in many ways, embrace it to where it's going to fit. That's I mean, we can go on forever, but I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, Sarah, is that while there are going to be job changes, and what's required for people to get jobs it's going to change without a doubt. Without a doubt. What we have to do is make sure that we are upskilling people and making sure that people actually get access to be educated and to have that opportunity to learn. So that
my issue is now that what I'm doing, all my curriculum, we're having now an AI undergraduate degree. When did we ever have that? We're having, you know, other things in my classes are completely revamped. I start from the beginning. And, you know, in some of my undergraduate beginning things, I start with Zoom. I said, everybody has to be able now to do all the back ends of Zoom. And one of the things they said, we never even knew it. We were just a participant. So I'm just the whole thing using AI, and people are scared, maybe scared for a reason. You know,
the need to be afraid. Once again, it goes back to who's actually controlling it, there's a bit of a power.
But there's no facing. You don't even know a lot of what's happening, and it's coming so quickly. And it's changing, and that's what I'm saying. So I thank you, and I thank David for letting me speak.
Thank you, Sarah. All right,
Scott. I think Scott is back.
Scott's back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we
Ooh,
can.
look at us, a miracle. Sorry about that.
That's
Renard,
great.
thank you so much for your comments today. I would like to present kind of a different opinion, a different perspective, and that is that I don't think that speaking about AI, speaking about today is relevant. I think what's relevant is speaking about what's going to happen in the future. And I know we're talking about that, but I think that you have to look at like what is the real model in the future. So if you think about from an entertainment industry and we look at that, let's say 3 years out, there's a couple of problems. There's one massive issue that the entertainment industry has. They have this really odd thing that is not known in any other industry. I'll segment it. And that is the concept of this residual ownership. So everybody's got their fingers in here, and this person gets this, and I own this, and I'm always going to get this in perpetuity.
Right.
Let's separate that from licensing, which is a completely different industry where you have one licensor, right? So if you take that out of, if you look at, okay, based on that, what's going to happen? Well, from my perspective, I'm a product developer. So I create something out of thin air. I present to my client. They say, yes, they own it. I don't get any residuals.
Right.
That is how it is in almost every other industry on planet Earth. So if you think about 3 years out, here's one of the biggest issues is that we know that the amount of content is going to dramatically increase. So
Mhm.
let's say 3 years, I'll be very conservative. Let's say that it's 10x what it is today. The
Okay.
problem is and I would suggest that Peter Diamandis' Moonshot podcast this week was mind-blowing. But they talk about this thing that's very interesting, and they talk about that the competition for people, it's not so much entertainment or whatever. It's you're competing for their attention.
Right.
Okay, if content is going to dramatically increase by 10x, but attention for entertainment is actually decreasing because of video games.
Yes.
So if you look at video games at one point, I remember, video games are almost as close to Hollywood. I didn't know this. It's 3x now.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
video game attention share is increasing continually. It's increased like, I don't know, 7 points. Entertainment has been decreasing.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, you have a supply issue that's going to dramatically explode. You have a demand issue that's continually decreasing. So you can see what happens. Where's the leverage? It's going to start to disappear. So this concept of that, I'm going to pay you because you wrote this piece, and I'm going to pay you because you did this piece, and I'm going to pay you to do this piece. When I have 10x to choose from where I don't have to do that, I think that model is going to go away. It's just, if you look at NFTs, they came up with this genius idea. Look, I'm going to have an NFT, and if you buy it, by the way, when you sell it, you have to pay me 20 points every single time it gets sold. How many of those do you think have sold? It's the same issue that's coming here. Yes, we can track these residuals, we can track all this stuff on blockchain, but that's irrelevant. You have to look at the reality in that you're going to have a dramatic shift out of this fantasy of residuals into no residuals, and that is going to be the future of entertainment.
I would only disagree with you on the fact that I don't think we'll get to the no residuals portion of things within our lifetime. I think that there may be a point where that actually happens. But the other part of this is that as we talk about that increase in content growth, what you're going to see is that the way that content is presented is going to shift. Right now, you're already starting to see it. Short form content is starting to rise above long form. And so people are using short form for the mobile, for that audience that's commuting back and forth and doing all these types of things. And if you have not gotten caught up in one of those those little serial story type things where it's like a minute and a half long, but at the very end of that minute and a half, they have some sort of cliffhanger that you have to go and watch the next portion. Because you want to know, okay, how is this story going to end? Why is this teenage vampire, on the subway? What's going to happen? And it pulls you in. So that kind of content is actually having, its moment in the sun. And it is because of the short attention span. And it's not just because of games. It's also very much because of social media that the attention span has dropped. That's also an opportunity for really good storytellers Because if you actually know how to tell a good story and you can actually get people hooked, you can keep them there, which then you hopefully will be able to monetize for yourself. One of the things that Craig talked about was being able to get music out there, and he loves the fact of being able to get that reach. That means that you don't necessarily have to have the big monolithic companies behind you in order to gain an audience. And if you just ask those audience to join you on Patreon or on some other app and just give you 99 cents, you know, all of a sudden, if you got 10,000 people listening to your particular piece of music, that's $10,000. Okay. You have that capability of actually changing that model. You are exactly right, Scott. The model is going to change. We saw it happen with the music industry. Okay. People aren't running out to say, oh, I got to get a contract from a big music company now. No, what they're doing is they're touring, they're getting their pay, they're putting their music out there, and they're creating their own space and their own audience. We're going to see independent studios do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. A24 is not going to necessarily have to actually go out to some of these other ones for distribution, because guess what? The distribution pipeline will change, which gives them the option to do what they need to do. A lot of that is going to be afforded by not just artificial intelligence, but all of the emerging technologies that are happening right now.
But why do you think that the residual situation isn't going to change?
I think with the way that the unions and the guilds are set up, as long as they remain strong, as long as people remain and continue to actually be a part of those guilds and those unions, they will be able to help kind of stave off that particular sort of degradation of the process.
I don't see how that is even remotely possible. I'll just give you an example. Mm-hmm. These contracts are good for Hollywood. They don't apply in Atlanta. They don't apply in Canada. They don't apply in Thailand. So all things being equal, this is going to come down to a low-cost business, right? The studios are the studios are kind of in an interesting position. Their costs are going to drop dramatically, but their demand is also going to change. But if I can buy, it's the same thing now. LA now is, pumping all kinds of our tax dollars into, trying to bring back film. But if I don't have to be bound by any of these residual laws in North Carolina, why in the world am I going to film anything? It's just another beer. It's like, hey, you can have your agreements and I'll pay all the residuals you want, right? When I do it in LA, I'm not going to film a thing in LA. I'll go over here and I'll get the exact same thing.
That's a battle that's going on right now. That is a battle that is going on. But someone asked us to focus on AI more so than residuals in the chat. Exactly. And that's a good conversation, Scott. And you and I can definitely go offline and talk more about it. I'm curious as to some of your experiences, because I feel, and I'm artist friendly. I lean towards the artist because I'm a creator myself. So I feel that there's strength in numbers and there's strength there. So David, we got about 3 minutes.
So we'll bring it back, and I don't want that to be a private conversation, Renard. I want to do that as another session with you.
Okay.
Maybe, right? Because
sure.
Yeah, we'll do it later in the year, whatever. When we release your 8-year-old tapes, I was excited to hear about that. So
you don't want to see those bunch of flip books and bad animation.
We'll do one more Harry, and then we'll break up those.
All right. Well, and thank you guys, David. You'll just have to cut me off because I don't know which one of these 12 topics I should really address that I would like to with you. First, I want to say, Renard, thank you, and I feel your pain. Okay. I want you to know that. And so I agree with Scott. I agree with Raymond on a couple of things I'd like to address with you. And the AI, this issue is important, residuals. Now, I make TV commercials. And when I do that, I'm work for hire. I don't get residuals for the commercials, right? Scott and I went to AI on the lot, Renard, and we should talk about that when we have this AI conversation, because Hollywood's struggling and it's going to get worse. Now, my wife and I just went and saw Brad Pitt's movie, F1 the movie, and we and the other 6 people in the theater enjoyed it, right? But and it's making money. They come out the first 3 or 4 weeks, but the home theater has gotten so good, right? Mm-hmm. That a lot of people don't. We need that shared experience. Yes, somebody mentioned that. We got to go to the market in this, but I want to remind you with the cable issue, okay? Because I used to do commercials for a cable company. When cable was first coming out, we were, oh my God, 25 channels. That's awesome.
Mhm.
People just wanted cable. They didn't care that it would drop out every other day. They wouldn't accept that with their cell phones, anything else. They just wanted cable. And then the cable companies had a problem with customer service, right? Well, I don't know if you remember the campaign, quality cable started happening. It was called HBO.
Yeah.
HBO was a
Yeah.
paid for thing because that was quality storytelling, and
Mhm.
they had to do a campaign because people said, "You're going to get cable. You're going to get cable." They meant, "Are you going to get HBO?" And the campaign was, "It's not cable. It's HBO." They had to separate themselves from that, right? And as we've got all these channels, what I want to tell everybody is AI is the ESPN of the day. ESPN people are, who's going to want to watch ping pong in the middle of the night, right? But ESPN saw the opportunity, they went after it. This is what's happening with AI at this speed, right? And all these legal cases are happening right now, so we gotta work our way through this. But I also want to remind you about relevance because I share everything. I'm a professional too, and I got friends that say, "Harry, your Hollywood friends are going to throw up over this thing. They want high fidelity and great, music and all this. It's called Minecraft. They're not going to like this, but they get the interactivity thing. So there's a lot to discuss here, and AI's role in what's happening here. I think Scott's not completely wrong.
No, I don't think so either.
Right. And so we're headed that direction. But I'm glad that you said, you only need 10,000 super fans and you can make $1 million, right? The gatekeepers are struggling right now. And
Exactly.
I'm talking to the Directors Guild right now. I'm a member. They haven't seen this coming. 25 years I've been ringing the alarm for them. And there's a reason Hollywood's suffering. And as Scott said, now we're going to have this plethora of content slop, right? And so there is opportunity for the folks that understand the technology, folks that understand marketing, folks that understand storytelling. So there is hope, but I appreciate what you feel. I'd love to continue the conversation when we have time.
Well,
Yeah, there's definitely there's opportunity. There's definitely opportunity, but you have to actually get educated about the technology itself, what it can and cannot do. Understand that it is not an entity. It is nothing more than mathematics. That is what it is. Okay.
This is
But
by the way, is
that,
why I recommend Stone
yeah,
AI. If you
that's
haven't,
yeah, you gotta really focus on it. And that was a smooth pitch for Stone AI. You can tell that you did commercials and you were in marketing. But
I'm
the
expecting a
goal,
check from David. Okay.
yeah, the goal really for me and what I really want to see is I want people to understand that if you are in fear of this and you're not actually leaning in to learn more about it, you will be left behind because there's no way for us to stop what's actually happening. It's going to be a part of every single aspect of our lives. Someone mentioned healthcare earlier on. Healthcare is having just, they have on one side the ability to do a lot of research and a lot of data analytics at a much faster rate, which is great. And then on the other side, how far can they go with the testing? Because you have human testing rules and you also have human information, with HIPAA and all of these types of things that's not supposed to be totally accessible across the board. So they've got to dance and kind of move between all of those types of things in order to be able to fully actualize the potential of AI in that space. But if someone is using AI to figure out how to cure cancer, what limits should be applied to make sure that what they're doing doesn't harm human beings? It's the same thing when we look across the other verticals. What limits should be applied to make sure that what you're doing and your integration of the technology is not destroying the actual industry itself?
Yeah, I agree
That's
100%,
yeah,
100%. We got to look forward 2-3 years out as this
yeah,
stuff
exactly,
continues to
exactly,
improve when it does
exactly.
get there, right? In the
Yeah,
meantime,
that's it.
more slop's coming, but
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, we have to really focus on where things are actually going to land. And to be honest, they're not going to land within the next 5 years. We're going to continue this upward trajectory because AI is just the beginning of just a bucket of technology that's actually going to change, at least in the space where I work, the way that we experience stories, the way that we experience, this entertainment. Immersive entertainment is there. Gaming, as someone mentioned, is there. Mobile gaming is bigger than anyone would ever think. You know, all of these things are here, and yet and still, last week, 9,000 people were laid off from Xbox.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a lot of things happening and a lot of growth and a lot of movement, but then you also have a lot of disruption. How do we figure out how do we do this as human beings in integrating this technology without harming ourselves? And that's, that's the great existential question. But humans have a tendency, and I don't want to be a pessimist, but we do have a tendency to kind of, shoot ourselves in the foot sometimes.
True.